Hello and welcome to another edition of Charch Chat as we review the action from Sunday in Week 7's games. And boy, just a ton of stuff to get to. Let's begin here. Marques Colston, no catches and plenty of drops. Yes, he did play. If you just looked at the box score or you just looked at your live scoring, yes, he played. Now, he wasn't on the field all the time. It seemed like my ballpark here is about half to a third of the plays, but the passes that were thrown to him, he dropped a bunch of them. And so he had said that the thumb was 100%, and so I really believed him. But when he's dropping passes, it could just be rustiness too. I mean, the guy who basically hasn't played this year, so I'm giving him a pass on this week's game, but I fully expect him to be back to his normal self next week, and obviously very disappointing for fantasy owners, without a doubt. Next, we go to Marques in his big game, 120 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, the thinking here is, if Marques can run for Pittsburgh, imagine what Willie Parker is going to be able to do when he comes back. Now, Parker, obviously he's been hurt for a long time now. It just seems like a really good time to trade for Parker because he just seems a little off the radar right now. But when he comes back, he'll be the main guy. And it seems that he'll do well behind this line. Moore's been effective for a couple of weeks. He will be effective. And, they'd shown an interest in using Parker at the goal line, which was one of the big concerns coming into the season. So I like Parker, and before the injury, he was playing like a top 10, top 5-ish back. So you may want to go just see what it would cost you to get Willie Parker. Good time to trade for him. Next, let's talk about the Dallas offense, which was a disaster under Brad Johnson. And then I'd expected bad things. If you saw me break down the Romo injuries and the trades last week here at Open Sports, you heard me say a lot of things that I really believe this offense was ill-suited for Brad Johnson, and this was going to be a bad marriage, and I'm sticking to it. Now, we'll see if this accelerates Tony Romo's return, and it could. He was the number 2 guy on Sunday, not the number 3, suggesting that should Brad Johnson have gone down, Romo could have stepped in, and but they were down a lot, and they were down a lot early, and I think they just sort of gave up on this one. Owens, just 2 catches. Jason Witten at just 44 yards. Roy Williams did not appear in the box score at all, and if he was in the game, hardly saw him. So this is an offense that looks like it's going to struggle under Brad Johnson. Again, I talked about this in detail last week. Just a very different offense from Brad Johnson because he's so dissimilar to Tony Romo, and that means you got all new schemes, a really different approach to the game, and it's going to take some real work out of Jason Garrett if he's going to try to milk some reliable points out of this outside of the running back position. Marion Barber had a couple of nice longer runs, but otherwise didn't do a ton either. So, and this was against one of the easiest defenses they're going to face the rest of the way. Again, the Dallas, and you talked about this last week too, the Dallas schedule, very, very hard. So, a lot of things not to like about Dallas. Frank Gore, 11 yards. He was outrushed by his quarterback, and a tough matchup with the Giants, but it shouldn't have been this bad. And he had managed to be productive against really good defenses all season. And the 49ers schedule has been very hard lately, but he managed to sort of get things done. Again, I'm giving him a pass on this one. He's been too productive for too much of the season. This was a bad loss, and I got to believe that they're going to look back at the film. Mike Martz and Nolan, they're going to go back and look at the film and say, we didn't use Frank Gore enough, and that's part of the problem of this game. So I fully expect Frank Gore to return to normalcy beginning next week. Willis McGahee, over 100 yards and a touchdown, which is great for his owners, although not sure how many of you had him started. Miami had been very tough on opposing running backs coming into this game. But the better question is, what do you expect out of him going forward? And frankly, I'm not very optimistic. I'll tell you why. This is still a by-committee approach. There were still a lot of carries for Ray Rice even and LaRon McClain, and McClain's still going to be a goal line vulture going forward. So I'm just not sold that Willis McGahee is going to provide reasonably safe fantasy stats going forward. And I encourage you to trade high on McGahee if you can right now, if you've got a buyer out there. Owen Daniels seems to be thriving under Matt Schaub, and I love it. 2 touchdowns here. His previous 2 games under Schaub, 87 and 70 yards. Those are great numbers for the tight end position. Just noting here that Schaub really using his tight end well, and I think that will continue. Schaub much better than Rosenfels at finding all of his receivers around the field, and I'm really happy with his ball distribution. Another big game for Andre Johnson as well, but Owen Daniels continues to thrive as well under Matt Schaub. Ryan Grant scored his first touchdown of the year. That's the good news. This was in my mind, against the bottom-ranked defense, run defense in Indy. This was a make-or-break game for Ryan Grant, who hadn't scored this season. Got a touchdown here. In a blowout win, so he got a lot of extra carries as well, and it really should have been an even bigger game than he had. But let's look at what's coming up. Bye week. And then at Tennessee, at Minnesota. He's borderline unstartable for the next 3 weeks. This is another guy. If you can trade him coming off a good week, do it, because he's not going to do anything for the next 3 weeks. Calvin Johnson, big game as the new go-to receiver for the Lions. Very happy to see that. Orlovsky playing pretty well, actually. And, granted, the Houston secondary is pretty bad, and they've made a lot of so-so players look pretty good. But I'm happy to see him able to perform well. I talked about this last week as well. I think you're going to see a lot of inconsistent stats from Calvin Johnson, just depending on the defenses and how much attention he gets and what kind of quarterbacking he gets. And, because the passing game goes almost entirely through him, games where he's able to get open, I think he'll post good stats like he did on Sunday, but other games it won't look that good. The Browns passing game is worth discussion here because you're going to go back and look at the box score and go, what the heck happened? Anderson looked bad. I mean, really bad. He missed a lot of open receivers. He completely kind of crumbled down the stretch, although they scratched and clawed their way to get back into that game. I was really not happy with the way he looked over the course of this game. And Braylon Edwards with a bunch more drops, and it looked just like the old Browns again. Like that Monday night game, just poof, disappeared, and very disappointing. And we're going to again have to be really cautious with their starts. And that was against, by the way, a very banged up Redskins secondary. So I really had expected more, and was disappointed to see that. Steven Jackson, obviously thriving under Jim Haslett. That's great. 3 touchdowns, fantastic. You got to wonder just how bad was Scott Linehan, because Haslett looks brilliant right now. And Dallas, prior to this game, had only allowed 1 running back touchdown all season. They gave up 3 to Jackson. They had only 1 running back had topped 62 yards against Dallas. They gave up $160 to Jackson. So, I mean, it really looks like Steven Jackson's back and running with authority. And they did this with the injured Orlando Pace. I mean, there's a lot of upside here, and it's great to see Jim Haslett turning it around. A couple other items. This is going really long. Sorry, this is going to be my longest Charch chat ever. LT looking very mortal again, and I'll just keep reiterating the same thing I seem to say every week. The turf toe is not going to get better. He's not right. This was the kind of game where the old LT against a good defense would have still found a way to get things done, and he wasn't able to do it. I continue to think this is going to be, we're going to look back at this as a mostly lost season for LT. And then lastly, in a year of really bad tight end play, almost no tight ends are producing on a regular basis. If you're scrambling for one, Vicente Shanko, 3 touchdowns the last 5 games, and all of those drops that he was notorious for up until very recently seem to be a thing of the past. He's making tough catches. He's hanging onto the ball when he does make a catch. So Vicente Shanko, somebody that you could pick up in your league with a fair amount of confidence. Whew. A long Charch chat. Thanks for sticking with me to the end of this one. I really appreciate it. We'll continue to keep posting throughout the week here as we start to review on week 7 and look forward to week 8 here at Open Sports.
So you think you can tackle a pro? There's only one way to find out. Click on fantasy at opensports.com.